Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason. I'm speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And today I am doing another video on my top 100 favorite albums. Today we are doing number 92 and number 91, so we're kind of closing out the bottom 10 of my top 100. So get into number 9, number 10 uh, reviews on this list. And before I go to that, I just want to say thank you a lot for watching this video and subscribing and liking. I've got 20 subscribers now, so not a lot, but I mean, to me, I'm happy to have any subscribers. I just did this channel because I just enjoy talking about movies and music, and it's something I've always enjoyed talking about. And I just love the fact that I get to, express my opinions on here, and people listen to it, comment on it. I really enjoy reading comments and discussing it and hearing other people's opinions. That's the whole fun of movies and music is expressing opinions and discussing what you like. Anyway, so yes, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for everybody that listens to this channel and listens to me speak here or watches me. And saying that, we'll go to our first album on my list is ranked number 92, and it is a very popular album that's I'm sure is much higher on a lot of people's list. Not to say it's not, it's in my top 100. It's an album I really like. It's one that I just kind of discovered in the last year, but it is Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan. It came out in the year 1975, and it's his 15th studio album. Like I said, this is a very popular album. If you're a Bob Dylan fan, this is usually in your top 3 favorite albums all time. Or favorite Bob Dylan albums, and usually it's in a lot of top 10 best albums all time. In fact, Rolling Stone has it number 9 in their 500 greatest albums that they just redid in 2020. So it's a top 10 album on Rolling Stone. So I mean, obviously, it's very popular. It's number 92 here. Thing about Bob Dylan, I'm a fan of Bob Dylan. I definitely love a lot of his big hits. He's obviously considered the greatest songwriter and most influential. I mean, even to the Beatles, look to a lot of influences from Bob Dylan. I know John Lennon and Paul McCartney have talked about, in the '60s listening to Free Will and Bob Dylan, and it really influenced them when they made like Help and Rubber Soul. Kind of inspired them to be, songwriters to write about deeper subjects other than just love songs and breakup songs, which were very popular at that time. Just catchy pop songs, but they were writing even more deeper songs. I think that's a lot of thanks to Bob Dylan's influence. Yeah, and so I'm a big fan of. I mean, I say pretty big fan of Bob Dylan. He's definitely one of the best unique artists I've ever heard. Same Bob Dylan. I kind of, I've heard his music kind of growing up. At some point, when I was a teenager, I think my dad got a CD that had like the greatest hits, Bob Dylan's greatest hits, and I would listen to that quite a bit, and I really loved that CD, and so I kind of became pretty well known of some of his bigger hits, and of course, a lot of his hits were covered by other bands, and in my opinion, a lot of the covers are better than Bob Dylan's original, just because, of course, if you know Bob Dylan's well known for not having a very good voice. He has a very voice goes out of tune a lot. It just doesn't have a great tone to it. And it's part of what makes him kind of a unique singer, I think. And actually doesn't. I can see it. I can see someone saying they don't like Bob Dylan because of his voice, or that he's they just can't get into it. And I can understand that. If you listen to enough, it doesn't bother you as much anymore. It can be distracting on some songs, but for the most part, I enjoy listening to his voice. Definitely, like I said, makes the songs unique, I think, in a way. I don't know, it's not usually a good thing to be out of tune or to not sound good, but, he makes it work. Like I said, he's a great songwriter, obviously. One of the best songwriters ever. But saying that, I never really listened to Bob Dylan albums. I just knew his greatest hits. And so this last year I was trying to listen to his bigger albums, the ones that people considered his best albums, of course. And he was a very prolific writer and a lot of albums. I mean, like one of the most interesting things when I look at this is 1975, and it's his 15th album. He started probably like in the early 60s making albums. And so, I mean, he's made a lot. He's making an album a year, probably maybe 2 albums a year, and on some years. So, I mean, very prolific. And we make so many music and albums. I mean, not every album is gonna be great. You're gonna have some great ones. You're gonna have some really bad ones. For me, listening to Bob Dylan albums, I would say most of them aren't that good. I'm somewhat disappointed with. Um, in fact, I'll even say I have 3 Bob Dylan albums on my top 100 list. This is the first one. I'm Blood on Tracks is number 3. Is my third favorite Bob Dylan album, and of the 3 that made it in my top 100. Um, Talking about Bob Dylan, yeah, it's not that Bob Dylan's bad or that it's just that it's really hard to make a good album. And the fact that he has 3 albums on my list actually is like pretty good because not too many artists have more than 3 albums on my list of top 100 albums. Only the Beatles and Paul McCartney have more than 3. Besides that, some artists I really like only have maybe 2 or 3 albums on my list. It's really hard to make a good album, I think. If you can make 3 good albums in your career, I think to me actually you're doing really good. It doesn't seem like very good when you make, I don't know how many he's made. He's made, I don't know, 50 albums or something. Who knows? He's made so many albums in his career. To only have 3 good ones doesn't seem that good comparatively, but still 3 is, I think, good. If you can get 3 good albums in your career, in my opinion. Of course, that's just my opinion. Obviously, bigger Bob Dylan fans will have a lot more albums on their list and will praise their albums a lot more than I am. Still to say, I really enjoy this album a lot. And I discovered it just this last year, is what I was saying. So I'm just kind of coming familiar with it. And the more I'm listening to this album, the more I'm liking it. So I can see myself, doing this list at some point in the future. And I can see this album probably going up my list even higher. Because this last week, before I do a review for an album, I try to listen to the album about 3 times over a span of a week. So this last week I listened to this album about 3 times. And so each time I'm listening to it, the more I'm enjoying these songs. Just to say, something about Bob Dylan, I feel like this is 1975, so it's almost to me like it's not. I don't know, because he's just came out with an album I think this last year, but it seems like a later Bob Dylan album to me compared to like I think it was prime being like in the early late 60s, and then of course this is a good album too. So he's still making good albums at this point, but to me that's like his prime. To me was like in the 60s and maybe into the early 70s. I feel like of course, his style changed a little bit. In the early 60s, he was more just him, his guitar, and harmonica, and just him singing with the guitar. And it was more folk sound, of course, and more about protest songs and stuff like that. And then you get into, I think, late 60s, like with Highway 61 Revisited, maybe, was like his first album where he went electric, where he picked up electric guitar and it sounded different, and he had a backing band, and his albums I think sounded a lot different, not necessarily better or worse, just different. And his voice even was a little bit different. I think he kind of changed the way he sang songs, and some songs have more of a bluesy sound to it, so he definitely kind of went away from the folk music to more folk rock and bluesy music. Much different, still pretty good. I like both versions of Bob Dylan. Anyways, say that. This album has 10 songs on it. It has 2 fairly big hits for him, I think, or 2 songs are pretty well known amongst Bob Dylan, at least casual fans. One is Tangled Up in Blue, and the other one is Shelter in the Storm. I think everybody has heard those songs. I've somewhat know Bob Dylan. Interesting about listening to this album, when I've listened to like Buddy Holly's the Chirping Crickets album that I reviewed earlier or before. That was the album. I don't know if I forget how many songs were on there, but the album only lasted about 30 minutes in total because all the songs were like 2 minutes long. And so it's funny and even listen to some early Beatles records, most of them, you know, don't go over 45 minutes at the most, and they have like 14 songs, but all their songs are 3 minutes or less. And so I've been listening to a lot of these older albums. So coming up to Bob Dylan, and he has 10 songs, but the album is about 50 minutes long. So it's not, and 10 songs is not a lot of songs, of course. It's you know, it's on the lower part, I think, of albums. Usually are like 12. I mean, 10 to 14 range usually. Anything below 10 it's kind of a low number. Usually want at least probably 10 songs per album. Probably average maybe 12. I don't know. A lot of albums. But saying that, that means each song is quite a bit longer than what I'm used to. In fact, I think Idiot Win, one of the songs, I think it's about 8 minutes long. It's a pretty long song. There's another one I forget that I think it's maybe close to 7 minutes. There's 3 or 4 songs that are 5 minutes or over. So they're all fairly longer songs. So it's definitely different listening to them and getting the longer songs. It's something interesting about listening to Bob Dylan. He has this really unique writing style that I actually kind of like. It's interesting. Is that he usually a song you have, you know, verse and then you have a chorus, and your chorus is usually the big hook of the song, really the catchy part of the song that you just get in your head and you can't stop singing. Bob Dylan doesn't really write choruses. He writes verses, and lots of them. Like I said, his songs are fairly long, so I mean he's usually write maybe 2 or 3 verses on a song. He's writing 5, 6, 7, 8 verses, I think, or I don't know, I don't count them, but he writes a lot of verses, and basically there's really not a chorus with a catchy tune to it. Instead, at the end of each verse, he seems to add the same line, and it happens a lot in this album. Just about almost all of them. Tangled Up in Blue, he just ends with Tangled Up in Blue, you know, and that's how he ends the verse. You know, Simple Twist of Fate, kind of similar. Lily, Rosemary, and Jack of Hearts, he ends every sentence with, or every line with Jack of Hearts. Ends every single one. Shelter from the Storm, he ends every single one with shelter from the storm, whatever. Anyways, and it's a very interesting style of writing, which I actually kind of enjoy, and I kind of look forward to that ending when he then puts in that one line that's usually the name of the song. Anyways, another interesting thing I've like found like listening to this album is Bob Dylan has this interesting thing he does where he sings kind of at a middle or low registry, and then in certain parts of the song he all of a sudden will raise his voice way up high, and get really loud, and then he'll go back to the lower registry, or go back to softer, singing softer or whatever. And it just kind of jolts you because all of a sudden, bum, 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 and you go, oh wow, and it kind of makes the song interesting actually. But the thing about it, when he tries to get louder, he's always off key. Like he never usually gets louder and sings perfectly in key or whatever. It's usually off key, and so it's kind of jolting to hear this loud off key sound, you know. But like I said, it kind of, that's Bob Dylan. If you listen enough of it, it doesn't bother you. You just go, oh yeah, that was interesting, you know, and that kind of makes the song a little more memorable, I think. But it just makes me wonder what's it like to be in the studio with Bob Dylan, you know. And I don't know, he probably produces maybe his own records, I don't know, but I think if you're a record producer, you'd be like, all right, Bob, Mr. Dylan, you know, let's sing this next line here, and you know, and Bob Dylan goes, and the record producer's like, yeah, well, let's try that again. You're a little off key there, Bob. You know, maybe, you know, listen to the headset. Try to stay on key when you get louder. You know, and we'll try that again. Okay, let's do take 2. And Bob Dylan's and they're like, you know, that's good enough, Bob. Let's just go on. I don't think we're getting any better than that one. You know, let's move on to the next line. Okay, you know, I can only imagine like. That was the best take. I always think, like, when you're in the studio, you take as many takes as you want to get the best sound. And also, of course, I'm sure the producer has different tricks on recording to help make the, you know, everything sound better, you know, mixing it all together and whatnot. You know, definitely different than singing live. When you sing live, you have, you know, it's the person singing has all control over how good it sounds. But in the studio, the producer can make it sound as good as he wants. And you can help sometimes hide bad singers through the studio. But when I listen to the song and Bob Dylan goes off key like that, I'm thinking, oh, that's the best take they can get out of that. or either that or Bob Dylan was like, well, I don't want to do any more takes. I like the way it sounds. Let's go on. Bob Dylan's good enough. He's a big enough star that I'm sure they just don't question him. Like, yeah, sure, you sell a bunch of albums, so we'll do whatever you say. That's just my take on. I'm just listening to that. Um, so I'll go to the singles. I found just one single off the album. Tangled Up in Blue, like I said, it's one of his most well-known songs. It went number 31 in the U.S., so fairly successful in the U.S. I'm surprised Shelter from Storm wasn't a single because that was, to me, I'll get to that as a really great song. Um, it went number one in the U.S. charts. The album did. Number one in the Canadian charts and number four in the UK charts. So I mean, very successful. Obviously, it went number one. So obviously, people really liked it. And of course, he was pretty big at this point. 1975, he was in the business for a while. So people definitely went out and bought this. It was certified US 2 times platinum, UK gold, and Canadian platinum. So very well in the US especially, but all over. Very popular album, sold very well. Um, yeah, it has a lot of great songs in here. Like I said, Tango Blue, really good. Simple, Twist of Fate, I really enjoyed. A lot of these songs I wasn't familiar with. Like I said, I was only familiar with about 2 songs. So some of these songs was just really great listening to it over and over again and just really going, man, this is really, this is a song I never heard and I really enjoy it. Um, Lily, Rosemary, and Jack of Hearts, I really enjoyed. I thought it was a really great song. If You See Her, Say Hello, really good. A little more low key song for him. It's just mostly him and the guitar. Because a lot of the songs have, of course, a backup band that backs them up. Has multiple acoustic guitars playing. But If You See Her, Say Hello, I love the sound of the acoustic guitar on that song. It was really good. Of course, it said Shelter Storm, such a great song. And in fact, I'd say like a lot of these songs, like I said, Bob Dylan doesn't sound great on, but Shelter Storm, his vocals are at the best. I think that's his best vocal work that I've heard is Shelter from Storm. So I don't know why that was. If he was more focused that day, he did something different in the recording studio. But I thought it sounded pretty good on that song, and I really love the acoustic guitar on that song. It's mostly just strumming, but I love the strumming of the acoustic guitar. It sounds really good with that song, on that song with his voice. And again, I love how he repeats the last word, "Shelter from Storm," from the end of each verse, basically. Just a really enjoyable song, and then it ends on "Buckets of Rain." Another really, I thought a good song. Had a little more acoustic guitar soloing in it that I didn't hear on a lot of the other songs I enjoyed. Yeah, a really good song, I think. I thought what I really liked about this, I liked the first 2 songs, really good. And then it was some okay songs. And then the last 4 were really good. So I love how it ends this album with 4 of some of my favorite songs on the album. Like I said, there's like 6 really good songs on here. The other 4, just okay. I guess that's why I have it so low on my list at 92 right now. Is that and like I said, a lot of these songs I'm just discovering for the first time, so it hasn't grown on me quite yet. But I can see this probably growing on me over time and getting higher on my list. So we'll see. So I'll end this one with top 3. Number 3 is actually Lily, Rosemary, and the Jack of Hearts. I really enjoy this song. Listen to it over and over again. Um, yeah, it's a fairly long song, but like I said, I enjoy how it ends each verse on the Jack of Hearts. Yeah, so it's kind of a great discovery for me at number 3. Number 2 is If You See Her, Say Hello. Like I said, I really enjoy. It's a little bit different song from the other ones, a little more softer, I think. And I like the sentiment of, yeah, you see her, say hello. Um, and the acoustic guitar goes before each verse, like boom, 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 boom. And it goes to the next verse. And I just like that little interlude, boom, 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 boom. I don't know, I really enjoy those kind of things in songs. And so, yeah, really good song. Not as well known as some of the other ones. And number 1 has to be Shelter from the Storm. That's like a top 5, if not, it's top 10, not maybe top 5 favorite Bob Dylan song of all time. Just really, really great song. As I said before, Shelter from the Storm. Definitely got to check that song out. Yeah, Tango and Blue didn't make my top 3, which is probably surprising because that's on a lot of people's favorite songs of his. And I like that song. Didn't quite make my top 3, but like I said, there's a lot of good songs on here. They all could get into my top 3, but from when listening to this last week, those are the 3 that I think of the most, for sure. Anyway, so that's my top 3. That's my review of Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks. Anyways, and I spent a lot of time on that one, probably longer than I expected, but there's so much to say about Bob Dylan. and his work. Uh, so I'm gonna go to the number 91 song on my list, or album on my list. This is Lionel Richie from Lionel Richie. So debut album, first studio album from 1982. Um, Interesting, just name the album after the artist Lionel Richie. So it's like when you're trying to look up Lionel Richie, of course it's like album or song, or album or artist. So it's hard to pick or find it. Um, this album has 9 songs on it, so not very many songs really. This is his first album, so I don't know if he just didn't have enough songs written up for it. Thing about Lionel Richie, of course, great singer. Really love his vocals. Has a really smooth sound. Comes from like in the '70s, he was in a band called the Commodores, which kind of come from the disco funk era. Had some funky sounds to it and some R&B, and pop. I would call this album it's a pop. It's mostly a pop album, '80s pop album with some R&B maybe in it. Looking it up, they call it pop soul, so it's along those lines. Has a mixture of pop, R&B, soul music kind of mixed in. Has a little bit of funky music into it. The bass has a little bit of a more funky sound on a lot of these songs, so it's kind of reminds me of maybe what the sound was for the Commodores. Not real well known. I don't know the Commodores really well. I know like Brick House and Easy were some popular songs. And the thing about Lon Richie also is he wrote and co-wrote all the songs on here. I think he was the main songwriter for the Commodores, a lot of their big hits. So he's a really good songwriter, great singer. Plays the piano also on the songs. If you know, Lon Richie's a judge on American Idol right now, which I'm watching. So it's fun to see him on American Idol because to me he's one of the best artists, one of my favorites, one of the best out of the '80s. I think one of the best '80s pop artists for sure. One of my favorites. This album, like I said, debut album, he was actually still with the Commodores when he recorded this album. And after he recorded the album and went on tour, he quit the Commodores and went on tour for this album and, promoted it. So he's just coming off of a really popular group, the Commodores, and going solo. And this album was a huge success. Really good debut. Great debut album, I think. Very impressive. There's about 3 really popular songs on here that I've heard before. There's My Love, Truly, and You Are. 3 really well-known songs, and if you listen to pop music, you probably heard these songs on the radio. Like I said, those were the 3 singles also on the album. Truly went number 1 in the U.S. That was the song that did the best off of the album. You Are went number 4 in the U.S. and My Love went number 5 in the U.S. So 3 top 5 songs. That's pretty impressive for a debut album. 3 top 5 songs, and a lot of the other songs are really good. It's just a really great pop album. It's really solid. I like when I looked it up. Of course, there's tons of session musicians. So many different instruments in this album. You got some more upbeat music, and you got electric guitars and bass, and you got a lot of horns and orchestra kind of music, woodwinds, horns, violins, that kind of stuff. So you got a lot of great instruments in the background that really elevate it. Of course, he plays piano on a lot of songs. There's also there's some synthesizers used. So I don't know if that was in the '80s. I know it kind of happened in the '70s, the whole synthesizer sound, but I don't know if '80s had a big synthesizer sound to it too, because it sounded a little bit different than the '70s sound. I think it definitely sounds '80s. I don't know what it is that makes an album sound '80s, but it definitely I listened to it and I think '80s. Even though I was alive in the '80s, but I don't remember the '80s that well. It still kind of reminds me of the '80s pop music. Really great album. It charted number 3 on the U.S. chart, so really good in the U.S. Number 9 U.K. chart, so top 10 in both U.K. and U.S. Certified U.S. 4 times platinum, so really good there. U.K. platinum, Canada 4 times platinum, so really really good. Sold really well, highly successful. What a great debut album. To start your career. It also won 1 Grammy. Best male pop vocal performance for the song Truly. So truly, it was really, really huge. I mean, like I said, went number one, won a Grammy. I mean, huge for Lionel Richie. Um, yeah, so like I said, it's great because it has more upbeat pop music, and sometimes it has more softer, where just a piano and Lionel Richie's voice. I said, along like the first song serves you or serves you right. It's more of a upbeat song, has a little more of a funky sound to it. I actually kind of enjoyed that. Wandering Stranger was just more of Lionel Richie and the piano, and his voice is so good. I love just his voice and piano, sound great. My Love's so great. I love that song. He's such a great songwriter for love songs. Most of all the songs are love songs, I would say, but they're great. I love the lyrics in a lot of these songs. Um, like in My Love, is such a great line in it about uh, thinking about you blows my mind. It was like that's basically like the chorus is my love, just thinking about you blows my mind, and I think that's such a great line. And when you're in love, I think you totally understand that line. Yeah, just you just when you love somebody, you just think about them all the time, and you just just so excited about getting to see them. You just think about them, and so I think that song's so good. Such a great love song, My Love, and showing what it's like, getting those feelings of being in love. And then he does again in Truly, like I said, another great love song. You Are, it's great, a little more upbeat, great upbeat pop song. Anyway, so yeah, so really great all throughout. My top three, kind of mentioned here. Number three is Wandering Stranger for me. Not one of his more well known songs on here, but still, like I said, great. I love just him and the piano, and it kind of starts soft, and then later in the song, more instruments come in, and really great sound. Number two is You Are. It's probably the song I hear the most on the radio from him, or from this album, anyways. Yeah, really good pop sound. And then number one is My Love. My Love is so great. Like I was listening to this, and every time I hear it, I just go, "Oh man, it's so good." I really like the song. Uh, Such good vocals. Anyways, yeah. So Truly didn't make my top three, but it was close. Like I said, there's a couple songs that could have gotten my top three, but just didn't quite make it. But those were the three songs I love the most, especially My Love and You Are. I think definitely some of his best work. Definitely check those songs out. Anyway, so that's all. I'll end up my Lionel Richie review there on his album Lionel Richie from 1982. So there's my 92 number one. So I'm gonna get out of the 90s here pretty soon. And thank you again for watching this. And tell me in the comments what you think of Blood on the Tracks. And hopefully you don't get too much hate from having it so low on my list. I know that's Blood on the Tracks is pretty low on my list. A lot of people wish it was higher. But yeah, I'd like to hear your comments on Blood on the Tracks from Bob Dylan and from Lionel Richie. Yeah, and what you think about them. So thank you again, and take care.